I'm getting significant resistance from this file, and I'm thinking to myself, is this a bad idea? I feel like I've wedded myself to the idea of doing an access cavity here. And actually what I do realise is, because the access cavity is so close to the coronal aspect of the tooth and it's touching the gingival tissues, that the liquid from the access cavity is shortening out. You notice that sometimes it doesn't actually reach to the zero reading. You might ask yourself why that is. So hello, welcome to this week's Friday clinical case, and this is a case where I'm trying to be clever but it doesn't work out essentially. But yeah, there's a lot to be said about doing these unusual access cavities, because there's always a bit of a way up, isn't there, between making sure that we preserve as much of the tooth tissue as possible, but also being able to carry out the treatment that we've intended to carry out. And what you'll notice here is that I try to preserve as much of the tooth tissue as possible, and then realise that it just isn't working out, and then I'm going to have to do a conventional access cavity. But before we talk about the periapical, we talk about the case in detail, what I do want to say, and I say it every video, is that when we look at the metrics of the channel and we see who's watching these videos, over 50% of the people who watch these videos are non-subscribers. So if you could do something really, really quick, really, really easy, and it's free, that's just hit that subscribe button. If you hit the subscribe button, it pushes the channel further, it provides really, really free support, and it just makes me want to do these videos more and more. If you want to bring support to the channel even further, we've got a membership program that's ran by YouTube. It's a small monthly fee. You get early access to content, so if you like these videos, you get them up to 4 weeks in advance, and also we get exclusive content. We've got a endodontic access video, which is fantastic on there, and also we've got a second part of our newly qualified dentist series. So let's have a look at the case. So this is an upper right 3, and straight away when I had the consultation for this person, I noticed that the patient was exhibiting signs of irreversible pulpitis, and also a chronic or an acute periapical periodontitis. And when I was looking at the tooth, it just seemed, I didn't understand why this tooth had died off. And in fact, when we took the periapical radiograph, we can see here that there's in the mesial aspect of this tooth there's decay, but also there's an obvious apical area around this tooth. And I suppose if you've been a dentist quite a long time, you'd look at the decay mesial on this tooth and you think it was pretty sort of straightforward. It wasn't too deep at all. But in fact, when we get into the video and we have a little look, you can see that this is the cause of the sort of irreversible pulpitis. So let's get into the video. Again, I'm looking at the tooth, and I can't really work out why this tooth died off, because it looks seemingly completely intact, but actually when we look at the tooth in the mesial aspect, we can see there's this kind of ditched composite. It's loose, and there's also a bit of decay in there. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use my DG endodontic probe just to try and flick this composite filling out, and I do flick it out, and it's all a bit nasty in there. There's a bit of decay. So and also I'm feeling around to see if there's actually an exposure of the pulp, but there isn't. So I'm just going to use a slow handpiece here, use a rose head just to remove some of the decay. And the great thing about these ceramic rose heads, they're really, really cut efficiently. And once we remove the decay with the slow handpiece, I'm having to feel around for a breach, but I can't see any obvious pulp exposure. So we're going to do a bit more refinement of the access cavity, have a little feel around, and then what I do is I use an ultrasonic tip. And do not underestimate the power of an ultrasonic tip, because it can cut dentin. And once we've cleaned it all out, we can see there's an obvious breach here, and there's no pulp tissue at all. There's no bleeding. So this tooth is completely necrotic due to this decay mesially. So straight away, we've exposed the pulp chamber. We need to get rubber dam on. And hopefully when we place this rubber dam on, because I'm now thinking about having the access cavity mesially, there's going to be enough space to get in there, and there is. So I'm just going to give it the cavity a little bit of a tidy up with my rose head and also my fast handpiece, and then straight away I'm going to irrigate. And I'm thinking to myself, should I not access this tooth at this point? And I think to myself, I really do want to try and preserve as much dentin as tooth tissue as possible. So I'm going to get my size 10 K file, and you'll notice that I'm using an extra long K file here. This is about 31 millimeters, and I'm having a little watch wind around through this sort of mesial hole, and I notice that I'm getting significant resistance from this file, and I'm thinking to myself, is this a bad idea? I feel like I've wedded myself to the idea of doing an access cavity here, but in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, is this a good idea or not? I hook up the apex locator to the file and notice that I am not anywhere near zero reading. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the hand file here, and we can see straight away when we do remove it that it's ever so slightly bent, which is another kind of red flag here, because if it's bent, then obviously shaping this tooth using this access cavity is probably not the greatest idea. And when we measure it, we've reached about 19 millimeters. That's the furthest point we've reached. So I'm going to use some rotary files here at about 18.5 millimeters. And what this is going to do, this is going to open up the access cavity ever so slightly, and also open up the canal slightly. And I notice again this size 20 is struggling slightly, and I'm very, very deeply concerned about fracturing these files, especially because they have to go around quite a tight bend. But nevertheless, I use a size 25 high flex. These rotary files work pretty good. So I'm concerned about file fracture, but I'm not overly concerned. And then once we've opened up the canal space, I'm gonna just use my extra long 31 millimeter size 10 K file, and then I hook it up to the apex locator, seemingly think that I'm at zero, but as I withdraw this ham file, I notice that I'm just at zero all the time, and actually what I do realize is, because the access cavity is so close to the coronal aspect of the tooth and it's touching the gingival tissues, that the liquid from the access cavity is shortening out. So I give it a little blow with my 3-in-1, and now I'm getting this kind of more accurate reading. And then we have a little feel around, have a little watch wind, and then we finally get our zero reading. And when we pull the file out, we can see that the reading is at 20 millimeters. And you'll notice again the ham file is ever so slightly bent. So I am concerned about this. When I look at this ham file, I can see that it is bent, so I'm going to just do a conventional access. I just think there's no point. But what you'll notice about this conventional access is that it's straight down the middle of the tooth, and we're not opening things up. So it's going to be a very, very narrow access, just so I can get straight line access with my ham files. And I know that I don't need to open this all up, because I can reach the inside of the pulp chamber and fill it adequately, because the buccal access is adequate enough. And then we can see when we place the ham file through now our conventional access, you can see that it is you can see through the buccal that where the ham file is sort of negotiating. So we hook up the apex locator again, because now the reproducible point where the stopper is going to be different, and they can't quite reach to the apex. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of watch winding just to open up the access here, just to make sure that the ham file can reach to zero nicely and easily. So we've given it a little bit of a watch winding, and now we are at the zero reading. We're actually over, so I'm just going to ever so slightly push the ham file back. So we reach zero, and once we've reached zero, that is our our zero read. And of course, what I do like to do is I like to push it out a bit further and then back up again. So do it maybe 2 or 3 times to make sure we've got this accurate reading. And now from the incisal edge, our working length is 28, so much more than 20. We're then going to have to open up some extra long Wave 1 Gold hand files. HiFlex don't do extra long files yet. Apparently they're going to be coming in the end of the month. And I'm just going to use a size 20 Wave 1 Gold file here just to give it a good old shape out. And I'm doing a lot of sweeps there, but actually I feel like it's going to length quite nicely. Again, we're going to just do a little bit of aspirating, and we're doing a little bit of a novel way of aspirating here because I place the aspirating syringe in the buccal aspect, but it's a bit awkward. So I'm just going to do it in the conventional access, and my nurse is going to be aspirating through that mesial access, which is a great little way of irrigating the tooth. We're going to then recapitulate with our extra long K file, and then we're going to do a bit more shaping with a size 20, bit of recapitulation. I'm then going to do some final shaping with a Wave 1 Gold 45. Why am I using 45? Mainly because I don't have a 25 Wave 1 Gold, although I've got to be super careful going from a 25 to a 45, but luckily in this case it goes to length really nicely, although I do have to do a little bit of 20, a little bit of recapitulation, but we actually do finally get there. And then another problem with using when we encounter teeth that I've got extra long canals, especially size 28, is that the GP cones are not large enough. So I've got a really easy way here to extend the GP cones. Now, what I do is I just get a really large tapered GP cone. So like say I get a size 45.06, and what it'll be 45 at the tip, but for every millimeter it goes up by 6%. And if anybody knows anything about compounding interest or compounding values, is that when it reaches the top of the GP cone, it's rather quite thick. But in this case, I want to show you a different way of managing an extra long canal, and this is by splicing the GP cones together. So what we notice here is if we just take a conventional matched cone, it only reaches to 27, 28, which is not long enough for our GP cone to reach length. So what I do is I'm going to get 2 cones. The first one I'm going to cut it almost off at the end, and then I'm going to place another cone next to it, and I'm going to cut this a little bit further down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to splice these 2 pieces together, so the ends together. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to melt the two GP cones together using my heated plugger, although it is a little tiny bit fiddly getting the little pieces together. But if you just tack heat the pieces, what they do is both the GP cones sort of mold into one, and what you notice, it is quite fiddly to get the 2 pieces together, but once you've sort of tacked them together, what you'll notice is the join is just a little bit rough. So once you have gently sort of melted these two pieces together, just tidy it up a little bit with the heated plugger. But what you do need to do once you have sort of make sure you've really melted the 2 pieces together, you're going to roll this GP cone. So what I like to use is the back of a pair of tweezers. Give it a good old little roll there. Make sure you bring it together, and you can see now that the join is almost imperceptible. And if we place it next to another GP cone, an original GP cone, you can see that we've now got that extra length. So we've now got an extra long GP cone, and we are ready to place it into our canal. And I'm going to place the 2 GP cones in this kind of little deep GP disinfectant ring, Of course, we're going to disinfect this GP cone later, and we can see here now that there's plenty of space here. There's plenty of length of this GP cone for us to push it to length. But actually, what you'll notice is sometimes when you splice these GP cones together and then you place the GP cone into the canal space, you notice that sometimes it doesn't actually reach to the zero reading. You might ask yourself why that is, and that's because the taper on this GP cone is too thick, and in fact, because you've spliced the two GP cones, you can see here that the GP cone is short. Because you splice it together, the thickness of the GP cone isn't be able to reach through the thickness of the canal space. So what you do is give it a little bit of an extra roll. In this case, I've done this off camera. We push it to length again. I notice here that we're a little tiny bit short. So I give it another roll, keep rolling. And what's that doing is that is making the GP cone thinner so it reaches to length. So the most important thing is not the filling further up the canal, because that's going to be filled with our bioceramic, is that the tip reaches the end of the tooth and that fits snugly. And I've rolled it a couple of times now. You can notice that it's a bit thinner and it's also a bit longer, and now it reaches quite nicely to the correct length, and you get a little bit of tug back. And we see here that when we measure this now, it's at 27.5 millimeters, so super satisfying. And then obviously we're going to place this to length. We're going to take a cone fit radiograph, and we can see that now this cone fit, this GP cone fits really nice to length, and it isn't at the radiographic apex, but I wouldn't worry about that, because we know that we've got the correct working length with our apex locator, so we know that it's within the apical constriction. We're then ready to do our obturation. We're going to set up this disinfecting ring. We're going to use our disinfecting ring to fill a well full of sodium hypochlorite. We're going to use a file that's going to introduce the bioceramic later, and we're going to disinfect that. We're then going to pull out the we're going to pull out the GP cone, and we're going to place that into our disinfection ring. And now those two instruments, or the GP cone and the instrument, are getting nice and clean. We're going to do our final irrigation protocol, and this is, as you well know, sodium hypochlorite. I'm using 5% now, that's activated. EDTA, 70% activated, and then a final rinse of sodium hypochlorite, and then we're just going to dry the canal. I'm now going to use this new tip. Instead of having like a plastic sleeve on it, it's now got a metal sleeve on it, and it's actually quite useful. And this goes on our bioceramic. But the problem with this, of course, is it's a very long canal. So I'm going to place this this bioceramic tip quite far down the canal, so it's hard for me to visualize how much I'm using. So I do a first sweep with the bioceramic and notice that I haven't been pushing the plunge down hard enough, because I'm not used to this metal, this new metal tip. And then I'm just put it on my hand just to feel how much I need to be pushing down, and then I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to make sure that I am filling the whole canal space with our bioceramic and getting it to almost nearly the working length, maybe 5 millimeters from the working length. And once we've backfilled, we can see that the canal space is nice and filled. We're then going to place our disinfected size 10K file, and I'm going to place this to about maybe 2 to 3 millimeters away from the working length. And what this does is it gets rid of any sort of air bubbles. It introduces the bioceramic all the way to the end of the tooth. And then I'm going to use some isopropyl alcohol. We're going to pick up our GP cone, and I'm going to dip the GP cone into our isopropyl alcohol. And what this does is it gets rid of the residue of the sodium hypochlorite, and also dries the canal. We'll give it a little bit of a blow, and now that GP cone is disinfected and ready to go into the canal space. And because it's such a long canal, I'm just going to get my GP cone, and I'm going to very gently push this to length. The problem with having a very, very long canal space is that sometimes you get this kind of vapor lock where the GP cone sort of bounces up and down, and you'll notice it happens a little bit with this. But because the GP cone's been rolled out, it's narrow within the canal space, so it can the bioceramic can flow around it. And I'm actually going to use the buccal access here just to cut off the excess of the GP, mainly because the conventional access through the incisal ledge is quite narrow, and it'd be difficult for me to get a heated plugger in that narrow access. And then I'm just going to condense it down with my Max 2 pluggers. I know that the GP cone fits really, really nicely to length. I know that the canal space is quite wide, so I really, really want to condense down our GP with these Max 2 pluggers. Really, really, really push it down. And what you want to make sure is every single part of the canal space is being filled, and you've got this kind of 3D fill. And once we've condensed everything down, we're going to do our filling. First things first, I'm going to just remove some of the bioceramic with an ultrasonic tip. I'm going to put it in the conventional part of the access and also the buccal. And then I notice here that there's once we've removed the bioceramic, the sort of the GP isn't really condensed well into the orifice. So I'll just use my little heated plugger just to push that down. And then we're going to use our self-etching bond. We're going to light cure it both ways, and then you can see here now that the GP is all nicely and condensed down. We're then going to use our SDR. This is smart dentin replacement. It's a bulk flow composite, and it's going to fill everything nicely up. And then when we take our post-op radiograph, we can see that it all looks really, really nice. It's well condensed, and it's got this really, really nice 3D fill, and the filling looks really, really nice. So overall, again, really super results. It's one of those things where, with these types of treatments, you've got to stay on your toes. So it's really, really easy to sort of have a look at a case and go, right, I'm going to do it this way and I'm not going to change my mind. But in this case, I was really concerned about having a conservative access. But after having a little feel around and trying to use my hand files down this buccal access, I was thinking to myself, it's probably not in the patient's best interest. So I've made a very, very thin, small access. And, there's nothing wrong with changing your mind. And overall, thanks for watching. If you've got any criticisms, I'm sure there's many criticisms. People like to criticize. It's great. I prefer people to criticize. So if you've got any questions, please comment in the section below. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And also, if you want to bring the support even further, we've got the membership program. And I will see you next week in the next video, next Friday. Okay, bye-bye.